welcome back to the Business Catalyst series program. My name is Heather Thompson, and I'm so excited to be your host again. Today, I am joined with Stefan Rutkowski, who's going to be our guest for this series and this video in particular. Stefan is the president and CEO of Careers Next Gen. We're going to talk a lot about how we're connecting our youth with planning in their future. If you wouldn't mind just giving us a little bit of an overview and tell us about Careers, and for anyone who doesn't know anything about it, like, what is it?
Absolutely. Thanks, Heather. I'm super glad to be here, and I'm glad we're having this conversation because it is topical for sure. So Careers the Next Generation, we've been around for almost 30 years now. We started up in Fort McMurray, supporting trades, because there was a recognition that over time there will be more folks leaving the trades than were coming into the trades at the time. Mm-hmm. So the program started in McMurray to really rebuild that workforce, and it spread across the province pretty quickly. And by now we are all the way from McMurray down to Lethbridge and anywhere in between. We have about 70 staff across the province. And really what we're doing is we're connecting our high school youth, starting grade 10, to employers across the province, primarily in in-demand occupations. So there would be the trades, in agriculture, in health, in aviation, and a whole bunch of other areas. And this is really to help youth to understand why they're still going to high school, what a potential career pathway could look like following their graduation from high school. So really get them involved. And at the same time, on the flip side, helping industry to appreciate and understand what the opportunities they have with bringing youth into the workforce and exposing them at an early age to all the different pathways in the industries that exist in this province.
What makes Careers different from other workforce or student sort of placement, work integrated learning? How does this one look a little different?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. One is probably we're one of the few, if not the only organization that actually requires employers to pay youth during their internships. Now, that seems like a huge barrier at first, but when we looked at this over many, many years now, and we have had discussions whether we should discontinue this or not, but the reality is we need employers to have skin in the game, and we need employers to understand that it's important to value the work that youth bring to the workforce. On the flip side, we also wanted youth to understand you're actually doing valuable work. So don't just show up and treat this kind of as I'm doing a little bit of work. I'm really just here to get a bit of experience. You're actually doing work that is of value. So that combination between the employer seeing that they need to actually put them to worthwhile tasks, not just having them sitting in the background somewhere and, I don't know, counting paper. But they think, well, I'm paying this youth. I want them to actually do valuable work. And on the other hand, youth understanding there's value in my work. The other thing that is different is we're really focusing on the two key demographics here. We're focusing on youth, and we work very, very closely with school divisions across the province. So currently, we actually work with every single school divisions and Francophone region across the province. And so we understand students really well. And we have a very integrated setup where we closely engage with and integrated with these divisions. So we can leverage the schools to connect us to youth. We can't claim that, 70 people is a lot of people, but we can work with every single school and division. So we rely on our school partners heavily. And the other part is we understand industry really well. And I'm a good example. I come from 22 years of working in industry. So a lot of our folks know exactly how employers tick. They know what they need. They know what the challenges are. And we can bridge these two quite easily and make them understand both sides, how they can provide each other some support.
What an important gap. Because you think with technology and you think with the access that students have to learn, that gap would be getting like a little bit smaller, but we're actually finding it's even bigger sometimes. So, when I looked quickly at the stats and just the tremendous growth, I'm wondering if you can highlight some of the fun numbers, because when I saw these, I was like, oh my gosh, and I hope it's triple in the next 5 years. And maybe you don't want that. It's a lot, but yeah, maybe just give us like a bit of a highlight on what are some of those key stats that I think everyone would be really excited to know about.
Yeah, no, absolutely, happily. So I'll actually go back to about 2020, because at the time, former Premier Kenny came to us in about 2019, and he really wanted to grow that what's called experiential learning or integrated learning at an earlier age. And he would very often refer to it as the Germanic model, where youth get engaged with vocational training in industry much earlier, and really liked this idea. So he came to Careers and said, can you guys help us, the province, get to this point? And this target of 6,000 internships was put in place. At the time, we were placing about 1,500.
Right.
COVID came in, it upset it all, it went down. But this really, the incredible support by the Alberta government and industry partners really helped us then to grow from that roughly 800 actually during COVID to last year 4,500, and this year we're on track to 5,000, over 5,500 placements.
Paid placements.
Paid placements, wow. Yes, across the province. And so it really helped us to understand, to help industry understand the value, and through the help, as I said, support, financial support, government and industry to help us grow so that we had the capacity to actually do this. Yeah. The other important part is it was important always to our partners to not just, and I'm not belittling, it's just place youth. There's also a demographic component. Young women are highly underrepresented in some of these traditional trades in particular. So we put a very strong focus on young women. We call it Young Women in Trades and Technology. And last year we placed over 1,500 women in all sorts of placements, over 500 of them in the trades, and this is actually a significant high number. And Indigenous youth is another program we focused on a lot. So last year, well, actually this year, current year, I should say, we placed over 800 Indigenous youth, which, you know, for Indigenous youth, you know, there's so many other barriers of entering the workforce and getting workability, employability skills. So that program is really focused on helping Indigenous youth to overcome these barriers, and that has grown from a much, much smaller number to over 800.
That's so interesting, and it's so great to see where when you have the focus and the support. I think you hit the nail on the head. The support of industry and government, and just removing some of those barriers. It's so cool to see that there's proof in this concept. And so I guess a few, again, questions that are not scripted, but curious to know, what's the attitude from the students in terms of, like, are they apprehensive? I mean, there's probably like a whole host of different emotions, but at the end of the day, they're children for a lot of them. So yeah, curious to know, like, what is their take on this experience? Because I know when I was in school, there's nothing like this. Right. So yeah, curious to know, like, what are you hearing?
Well, some youth, so we have a bit of a challenge right now. Since COVID, a lot of youth are not overly interested in working while they're going to school. COVID really interrupted this and disrupted this quite a bit. So right now we have to break a little bit through this and get youth, and parents for that matter, kind of a little bit used to this again, that it's okay to work at an earlier age, senior high school for that matter. However, I had the great pleasure actually just attending one of our school presentations. So we spend a lot of time in schools and present to classes or you know, larger groups of students. And it was probably about 100 students attending. And A, they were highly engaged, and B, I was super surprised that after the presentation, a whole bunch of youth went down to the presenter and wanted to talk to them. So I think once you tell youth that A, we're going to find a job for you, B, you're going to get paid for this job, and C, the other thing that I mentioned earlier, you actually earn credits towards your high school degree. Because we work so closely with schools, you can actually earn credits towards your high school degree. When you put those together, it's a pretty compelling story. So once students hear that, they see the opportunity, they generally get on board pretty quickly.
That makes sense. I like that. That's just clear motivation markers. Absolutely. What about industry? So you have a ton of industry partners. I think, like you said it perfectly, like students, there's these consistent things. It's no-brainer for the students to want it. How has the experience been with industry?
Industry is a bit more challenging. It's not as easy to get in front of industry, you know, a larger group at any given time. On the one hand side, we have industry partners who totally get it. They've been there for the last 30 years almost. They understand that developing your youth is important. That's their pipeline. That's what we call it, the next generation. Whereas other employers look at it more like, I have to tie down resources to support these youth. They don't know what they're doing. It's going to cost me money. So they have other challenges and then barriers, of course. But we have seen almost consistently, and I think we have only very few examples where it didn't quite work, where once an employer kind of commits to it and brings a youth in, that this attitude changes, and that they're realizing that youth bring a lot to the workforce, and they bring a lot, even though they may not be trained already, but they have a whole lot of other benefits that they bring. There's enthusiasm, there's a lot of knowledge about the digital world, and they kind of rejuvenate some of the organizations. So once they get into this kind of, they get this understanding, we see a lot of our employers consistently taking students year after year or every other year, whatever their capacities are. But it is still a challenge with industry, for sure.
Yeah.
It's just not ingrained in a lot of organizations here to automatically think of youth as someone you would employ or bring into an organization.
It is interesting when we're thinking about like training as like a collective society, training young people. It is a bit of a mental hurdle, and maybe you, to your point, it's a societal thing. But what we're seeing right now from a macroeconomic standpoint is really concerning from an unemployment rate. And there's been, countless economists here in Canada that have been sounding the alarm for the sort of economic pickle we're in, because we seem to have a lot of jobs, not a lot of workers. And when we look at that unemployment rate, a lot of it is new Canadians, which is a whole federal issue that I know our new prime minister is trying really hard to fix that. But the other half of the unemployment rate is Canadians aged 15 to 25. Edmonton has the highest in the country at 17%, which is, I'd be lost if I didn't connect these two together, right? So you're working, and it's almost like, I don't want to say single-handedly, but that entire number, I can't imagine how much higher it would be if they didn't have these opportunities to get out and get paid. So I'm curious to know, when you hear that Edmonton has the highest number, you just hear that the overall youth unemployment is the highest it's been, I think, in 3 generations. Can you give us any hypothesis or anything that you're like, yeah, I see that. I can see why that would be difficult, or I can see that this is a problem.
Oh, it is a huge problem, Heather. You're absolutely right. So there's a couple of things that actually play into this. One, it's actually called the skills gap. Canada, Alberta for that matter, has one of the highest educated youth populations. Our students are, when you look at OECD numbers, we have the most that finish post-secondary high school, post-secondary education, university, college degrees, so highly educated.
Yep.
The problem is, though, when youth come out 23, somewhere around that, their skills don't necessarily match what the economy or employers need and want.
Yep.
And because of what we talked about before, a lot of youth not gaining right now work experience while they still go to school. They come out of school, if you do the math, they have about 16 plus years of education, very little work experience implies as well. But what can you actually do? And so these two in combination, you have a lot of youth coming out of the education saying, okay, what am I going to do now? I don't know where to go, and I can't find employment, of course. The other thing is that there's this hesitation of industry to bring youth into the workforce, and they're looking for an older demographic, and an older demographic COVID again disrupted this whole, may have moved on, or they may have retired, or they may not want to go back to the work that they did before. So this gap is widening somewhat. So it comes back to why we're doing the work we're doing. As you can tell from my accent, not made up, it's a true accent.
That was my next question.
I'm from Germany originally. And if you compare Germany, so you're right, we had about a 17% or so, even over 20% at some point here in the summer in Alberta. Germany generally has a very low unemployment rate for youth, about 6 point some percent, so almost a third. What generally is about half, roughly. The reason for this is that through our dual system in Germany that we have, it's called the dual system vocational training, youth start much earlier with some of their vocational training. They don't necessarily go to university or post-secondary college. It's a different system, but the point being is they start with about 16, they stay with an employer for about 4 years throughout their apprenticeship, and we have about 350 apprenticeship pathways, so a bit broader than Canada. And then they generally stay with this employer because the employer carries them through, employ them contractually for the apprenticeship, and then they stay. So you have a much easier, flow into employment. So what we then do is we're trying to mimic this as closely as possible, connect youth to these employers, get them into the work, into the industries when they're 16, 17, 18, have them build that connection so that when they're done with their post-secondary schooling or whatever pathways they're going to take, they can revert back to this and saying, I worked in this place, I've made these connections, I have this network, or at least I have an understanding how it works. And that will they can leverage this then to find employment.
Yes, I love all of that. And I think you have a proof of concept that's working in another part of the world. So yes, I love that. Like, let's discover versus create, because clearly this is a proven model that Germany has seen success with. I'm curious, I guess, about 2 things. Around when you see that the students and these young people have a path that they, what would you say generally, are they excited to stay in that path, or like in terms of like what you're seeing? Because now since the pandemic, you know, there's not a lot of years to be like, okay, now this person has started in this career or got this experience and now they're still in it. Are you finding that they're excited to stay in that, or they want to move around? Like, what are some of those kind of initial impressions of the results?
Yeah. So in some of our programs, it's hard to track, unfortunately.
Yes. Yeah.
So we're not entirely sure. We know that anecdotally, and I should probably say this too. Our program has two reasons. You want the youth to find out what they may not want to do. That's an important piece too, right?
Big time.
Go into this internship realizing this is not really what I want to do, and that's good. That's a learning, that's important. Move on to something else. The folks that like the internship and like the experience, anecdotally will move towards this, go to their post-secondary degree and stay into that field. It is more easily quantifiable actually in the trade space. So through Alberta Industry Training, we work with them regularly together in terms of exchanging data from youth that are in the registered apprenticeship program that is done through Alberta Education, and we support this, Alberta Education and Alberta Industry Training. A lot of youth that start with this, you can do this in high school. You start in high school, you can earn hours towards your first year of your apprenticeship, and you earn money. When you come out of high school, you actually have your first year of your hours done, and you can instantly go into your technical training. So by the time you graduate high school, you pretty much have your first year of your apprenticeship done and only need 3 more years. So we can track them more easily, and we see that youth that go through that registered apprenticeship program, I think it's about 85+% that will continue on doing their apprenticeship and move through that. So there's a very clear link. So again, that's so important, include them earlier. Youth also that start into this, what's called the RAP, Registered Apprenticeship Program, generally graduate about 22 or get their journey percentage at 22. Oh, wow. The average in Canada, or folks that don't go through RAP, is way higher. It's closer to 30.
Wow.
So you get a head start by 5 to 7 years compared to others. Generally don't come out with debt, right? You earned while you went to school. So there's a lot of benefit, and we see that connection definitely in the trade space.
I'm curious to know from your perspective, are you optimistic? Because one of the things that, again, this is a hard one to quantify, but there's more and more data that's proving one of the reasons why the unemployment rate is so high is an unwillingness and a lack of motivation to work. Right. And one of the things I've heard is there's so many reasons why that is. Obviously, the pandemic's a big part of that, but there's also some evidence that the Gen Xer, so like the parents that are like 45 to 60 right now, make it very comfortable for young people to just stay at home. So that failure to launch thing, like there's this, it's just really interesting to see what is motivating kids. So you're there, you're seeing it all the time. Curious to are you optimistic? Are you seeing that kids are like, I want to get out there. I want to be uncomfortable. I want to make mistakes. I want to, do all those things. Are you seeing a positive trend toward those sorts of things that make for a really vibrant young economy?
Yeah, I think I'm living this trend. I had my kids move out of the house pretty early to find their own path. But so we work a lot with parents, as a matter of fact, too. So when we have events or when we have evening events or through our school partners, we try to get in front of parents and try to help them understand how important it is to have youth go out and experience something as early as possible. I'm positive, though. Yes, the short of it is positive. This would be a very dreary job if I would be not. And the reason for this is, I think we have built into our society a certain level of comfort, right? We, going towards a university degree. I went to university. This is not against university. I want to make this very clear. University pathways are great. But there was a little bit discomfort. Well, after high school, I'll go to university. I'll be fine. And I think we're learning more and more, and youth is learning more and more, that this doesn't mean you automatically will go into a high-paid, easy career afterwards. So, and I think the education system here is doing a great job in starting to move that career education piece and the information of it earlier in the education process, starting in junior high, so that youth get exposed to way more different pathways that are out there, and considering different pathways, whether it's university, whether it's a trade, whether it's any other vocation at a polytech or otherwise. And so I think we'll see more youth over time kind of start adjusting a little bit more to what they like doing rather than what the expectation is that they should be doing.
What a great
So yes,
point.
I'm hopeful. It won't be an immediate fix. It's not
Right.
by next year everything will be fine, but I think over time we'll see that adjustment.
What a great point. It's so interesting because I worked in the retail sector forever. And I remember going through university and I'm like, okay, well, I won't always work retail. And then when I left retail, I was like, that was an amazing career. And so when I worked at the university, one of the things I tried to do with the business students was, like, I would call it like the reality of retail. And the myths that a lot of people put on different, like, I'll say industries or jobs, it's just it's so apparent when you ask them, like, how much do you want to get paid? What sort of things? What sort of activities? And so it's so great for us. And I think we have this great opportunity to demonstrate and show young people, hey, these are things that this is actually what it looks like.
Exactly.
And it's not just, I think there was a big trend there before the pandemic where students, and there was some data to this, students were choosing jobs that looked good on Instagram.
Absolutely.
And that, so it's so great to see, like, hey, like, actually, like, you might be more interested in this sort of vocation, even though it doesn't kind of check a lot of those boxes.
Yeah.
So
well, Alberta right now is the highest, I'm pretty sure, the highest registered apprentices, over 70,000. And about close to around 50% are under 25. So I think that shows a little bit. There's a huge number of apprentices, at least in the trade space right now.
So when I think about trades, I think I have a pretty, like, linear view. I'm curious if you can just enlighten me, because what I think trades might encompass probably doesn't. I'm sure it's a lot bigger now. So can you maybe explain, like, when I say the word trades, and you think of it, what does that actually mean? What does trades mean?
Right. Yeah, so it's probably a bit of a broader term than what we normally apply. You're absolutely right. I mean, we have registered compulsory trades in the province that, go through the full apprenticeship and all of it. And there would be your welding and your heavy equipment technician and all of, the ones, carpentry, the ones that we generally know. But across Canada, there's way more trades. There's close to 300 principal type of trade pathways. And they would include others that we don't recognize as such here in Alberta. One of them is actually in the aviation space, so aviation mechanics, aviation technicians, that they're recognized trades in other provinces or elsewhere in the country, whereas here they're not a recognized. Obviously, they're an occupation and a profession, but they're not a trade. So it is definitely broader. There's others, and that's why we don't just focus on the trades. We focus way broader, because some of these, outside in the agriculture space, or as I mentioned, aviation, are elsewhere considered trades.
Right.
So we kind of straddle across all of those.
So aviation. So what would that look like? Because you're right. When I think of trades, I wouldn't think aviation. So tell me more about that.
Yeah, aviation in principle is not very different. You have an electrician that is specialized on aircrafts, I think it's avionics. Then you have a mechanic, obviously, that works on, so all sorts of different trade type of professions in aviation. There's organizations that hire those, of course. There's airlines that have these folks working for them. A big facility being built in Calgary down there by de Havilland right now, which again will have a huge opportunity for youth to get engaged, because there's a significant workforce required. Airports are expanding in this province for sure. The province has provided a lot of support ongoing for that transportation and in that aviation space. So we can help youth, because as you were saying, a lot of youth, if they're 15, 16, they have no idea, right? Their concept of the aviation industry would be a flight attendant, maybe someone at the counter, and a pilot. Now, there's a lot of pilot training happening. I know that here in Sturgeon County, they're related to the pilot training. But there's a whole bunch of other jobs and occupation in that space. So we actually work in partnership with an organization called Elevate Aviation, who also works, I think, with the Villeneuve Airport here in Sturgeon County and the Collegiate, to help youth, again, understand the training opportunities and the job opportunities. So Elevate Aviation does a lot of training and provide training programs. And we then help these youth to actually get an industry placement and use that training in industry, and then hopefully go on in that industry to get their further training post-secondary and stay in the industry.
Very cool. I think it's something that I'm when I'm talking to young people, and listening to them, and I'm even fascinated with how they're learning and how that looks different, because especially things are changing so much faster, and access to knowledge is so different than it was 20, 30 years ago. So I think being able to remove some of the classroom-esque type of learning environment, I can see how that is so helpful, because even if it's not a great fit for them, the learning in and of itself is valuable. Of being able to switch your brain and learn this skill.
So we consider industry or the workplace an extension of the classroom. It's a different type of learning, you're right, as in you apply your learning. And it also connects your learning to the actual real world application. So we have a lot of youth that sometimes, and it's not that they're not smart, highly intelligent youth, but they may not thrive in that more academic learning environment. And they may be sitting in math and thinking, I'm never going to learn any of this. I'm never going to use any of this. But as soon as they're in the workplace, they're applying all this stuff. And sometimes a mentor or journey person will say, well, this is actually math. It's like this light coming. Oh,
this is why.
Right. This is why we're learning it. So that connecting it to the application helps a lot of you.
I'm curious to know, and if it's a fair statement, that this is an overwhelmingly positive experience for industry and employers as well. Curious, just if we could talk a little bit more about that, maybe the good, the bad, the ugly.
Sure.
And then I also want to know, like, from your perspective, what's best case scenario here? Like, where does this go next?
Right. So and we have data actually to back this up. It is a positive experience overwhelmingly. About over 85%. So we do a feedback survey every year with our employers and students, and over 85% of employers have a positive and are satisfied with the experience and the students that they're bringing in or that they're being linked up with. Because what we actually, and I didn't mention this earlier, what we actually do, and we work with industry to provide these positions. So industry would come to us and saying, we need to, or would like to have 2 youth that are doing these tasks in the programs that we offer. At the same time, we're out working with youth, and then based on their interest and what they tell us they want to do, we match them in the background. So we would go back to this employer and saying, here's 5 youth that match what you need. And the employer looks at the resumes, the information that's provided, and saying, okay, I want to invite 3 of them for interviews. And then it's all up to the employer. They interview them, they hire them, they talk to them, or they come back and saying, neither one of them really fitted. Do you have other youth that might be interested? So we're doing the matches in the back end to help the employer not weed through a long list of possible
applicants. This is like
applicants.
a concierge service.
It is a bit of a concierge service.
Awesome.
And it's all free.
And it's all
free. And it helps these youth because they're already one step further, right? They're not going to be sent out to all these things that just talk to these employers. They already know there's a fit. They already understand that there's, kind of a first hurdle taken. And generally that match helps them with that satisfaction, right? A lot, and based on our feedback, most youth come back, and so over 90% come back and said, yes, this was valuable. I learned something I didn't know before that will help me going forward. And that includes the ones that would say, I'm not going to continue on in that pathway. This didn't really work. Now, obviously, it doesn't always work. We have had employers who said this didn't work out at all, or that come back after a few days and saying this kid is not working out, and that's okay. And then this kid comes back, we'll find them another placement, and we'll connect this employer with another youth. And that's, with over 5,500 placements, you expect this to happen for sure.
I can't imagine what the rate would be without the matchmaking services that you do behind the scenes.
Of course, it would be way different.
Like, I can't even hazard a guess how much higher it would be.
So obviously, a perfect scenario would be that every single youth in this province at some point in time gets the opportunity. We have just at the senior high school, and I hope no one is going to check this. Well, someone should probably check, but probably about 170,000.
Okay.
That's just senior grade
Yep.
10, 11, 12.
Yep.
So there's a lot of youth, obviously. If everyone at some point in time gets the opportunity to do some experiential learning throughout their high school, that would be ideal. It would overwhelm us, but that's a good problem to have, I suppose.
Yeah.
That would be ideal.
Yeah.
And more importantly, or connected to this, that more employers understand that it becomes a cycle, right? Once you start doing this, once we train these youth, they'll come back into your industry, even if it's not this one person, right? Even though Heather may have done an internship with me, I may not hire Heather in the future, but I will hire someone who went through that same program and has the experience. So it becomes a kind of a perpetuating kind of system.
One of the things that even today when I'm hiring, one of my favorite things to see is a work experience that is like that is related to, like, for me it was like service related, just based on the industry I worked in. I'm like, oh my God, this person worked retail. Oh, this person worked at a restaurant. These are all such amazing skills that I'm hoping that they can do in this job.
Yep.
And so seeing that, you're right, maybe, it didn't work out for Sally in this particular, but now Sally is so much more employable because Sally did this program.
100%.
It's fascinating, and I had no idea the work that you guys do behind the scenes, and that's like, I think if employers heard that, they'd be like, everyone would be signing up. So I agree with your mission. I think let's shoot for 170,000 placements next year. It's a great 2026 plan.
My board will love it.
I guess maybe just for fun, let's talk about money for a minute.
Sure.
So curious to know from a financial standpoint, like you said, this is all free. What does that look like in terms of resources? How is it free? What can employers expect? What can industry expect? And what sort of financial resources are there out there to help? Let's get to that goal of 170,000.
Right.
Yeah.
You mean support for employers to bring youth into the organization?
Yeah. And also, like, how are you funded?
Okay, how are we funded?
Yeah. I'd love to know both of those things.
Of course. Yeah. So speaking of funding, so we are obviously as a foundation reliant on donations or support from industry, and we have some fantastic partners that we have literally had for 30 years up in the Fort McMurray area and across the province. So that is a significant contribution. The other thing I might actually want to add, and sometimes this is easily forgotten, if you think about that, if you take 5,500 youth, they're all being paid through these employers, and if you sum this up, there's millions of dollars that all of these organizations actually contribute into the system. It goes to the student or the youth, which is fine. But the reality is these organizations are using this money. So there's a significant industry that doesn't come to us, contribution to that whole system. And then we have our government partners, of course. We are funded through advanced education, and we're also getting support from Jobs, Economy, Trade and Immigration and Alberta Education. So these three ministries are supporting us, and they have been doing this for a long time. And it's critical for us and very much appreciated. So industry and government, really.
Awesome.
Now, on the employer side, there's actually a whole bunch of incentives that are currently available. Two of them is actually provided through advanced education. It's an incentive program that is now focused on the trades. So any employer that brings in one or several youth into a trades position can leverage money that we are actually administering, and they can get paid up to $7,500 depending on the number of youth they bring in. We also have one that's focused on Indigenous youth, and that's mainly for the Indigenous summer programs for Indigenous First Nations or Métis settlement and locales to bring in youth for their summer programming and overcome some of their financial barriers. And they can actually get up to $15,000 depending again on the number of youth. And the newest incentive that was just rolled out and connects to the youth unemployment challenge that we currently have, and this one comes through Jobs, Economy, Trade and Immigration, is the Alberta Youth Incentive, Employment Incentive, Alberta Youth Employment Incentive, which is also administered by us. And for this one, employers can get also up to $7,500 to hire youth, and expands a little bit our demographic up to age 24. Okay. So any youth up to age 24 can when they hire youth, the employer can get that incentive. Right. And that's really and it pays about $10 on the hour that they pay if they pay minimum wage, or about a little bit more than half of this. And it's really meant to all of the stuff we just talked about. bring these youth into the organization, get them employability skills, and really ease them into the workforce through these incentive programs.
Okay. I love it. You're just removing barriers.
Yeah,
Absolutely love it. Yeah. It's like, and that's the thing when we're whether you're the young student or you're the employer, there's so many barriers right now. It just seems like every 5 seconds there's something that's commanding your attention or your time or your money. So I love you're removing those.
Yeah.
So I guess the obvious question is, if I'm a student and you said you're in every school right now, how do I get involved? Do I wait for you to come to the school? Like, how does that work? If I want in?
No, don't wait, be active.
Right.
So schools have something, generally it's called an off-campus coordinator or a career counselor, or both for that matter. All that students need to do is contact the off-campus coordinator, have a chat with them, and then they'll connect them. Generally, they will connect us through. Obviously, they can go to our website. Maybe it'll show on the screen, I don't know, but they can go to our website. The application process is super easy. We'll connect back to these youth. They literally just contact me and we'll contact them. And one of our program coordinators will have a chat with them. But because we work with schools, they'll get connected anyways. The off-campus coordinators, career counselors will work with us anyways. So that's very easy.
Do I have to be in school?
So we have a program that goes up to age 21. So recently graduated youth as well. They don't have to go through school, obviously. But anyone who is still in high school currently, yes, we want them to go through. It's because of the credits.
The credits, yeah, of course.
And the other important piece is students that are in school in Alberta are covered by the educational WCB. So employers don't take the insurance risk with these youth. They're covered through WCB. So once they're registered through the school, supervised by the off-campus coordinator, the insurance is covered.
Very cool. Okay, good. Again, logistics I wouldn't have even thought of. And as an employer, of course, now I'm like, how do I get involved? Like, how do I take advantage of this really cool program?
Almost the same, except you don't have to go to an off-campus coordinator. You can just contact us, and we'll and we have a commitment within 24 hours. We'll connect back to an employer. There's probably two key parts what we want an employer to be aware of and committed to. They need to provide mentorship. We don't want an employer just say, well, that sounds cool, I'll do it, and I might get some money out of it. We want these employers to understand, I'm going to mentor youth, and this is your opportunity to expose them to your industry and bring them into your industry and make these kids want to work in your industry or at least explore it. And the other part is obviously a safety consideration. The school, because they're involved, they will do a safety inspection through the off-campus coordinator who's involved. But we also want employers to understand how important it is that youth go into a safe work environment. And most employers do that anyways. This is not a big challenge. But it's different to have a 17-year-old in your... And it's not that they are less safe. It's not that they're unsafe. This is again the time for these youth to understand how important safety in the workplace is. If you get exposed to this when you're 17 years old and you see everyone around you is acting safe and in the right manner, you'll adopt it. If no one cares, you think, well, this is what it is. Now, the school, the curriculum requires actually in Alberta that youth take a basic safety course before they start an internship, an off-campus program. It's called HCS 3000. Youth get a credit, 1 credit for it, but they have to do it before the school says, yes, you're good to actually do a program. Careers actually administers this whole program. It's called SafeGen. So we provide, it's also free. It's through an online portal. Any student can take it. Last year, over 12,000 students took that course. So it just helps a little bit of that comfort with employers that they say, okay, there's a basic kind of safety understanding and foundation there. And it helps youth to again understand this is important when you go into the work world.
Great distinction to make too for employers, right? Because it's not just like, oh, great, yeah, I can hire someone and get some help. Like there is a larger undertaking, but that you're right, A should be there in a lot of ways already. But yeah, it's a great distinction to make, and I think I'm really hesitant to use the word of responsibility, but I really do think as if we want a strong economy and we want to work on this unemployment rate, and not to mention all the mental health issues that we have with young people, this is something that I think, we all have a call to action and responsibility to support. So that's kind of my final word, but I want to give you the final word. Want to know, like, anything in your brain that we didn't get to talk about, anything that you just kind of want to really hammer home that you want people to know about.
I think for employers in particular, I think we are sometimes missing out what an untapped resource we have in this province. If you look at a 17 or 15, whatever the unemployment rate is of youth at this age, it's huge. It's a huge number of youth. And I'm just sometimes afraid we're losing these kids, right? And they're going to go into a bit of a spiral. So I would really, really encourage employers that have the opportunity, that have the resources and have the funds to do this, to really consider bringing youth in. And I think they'll learn that this is going to help them tremendously. And talk to us, talk to other employers who are already doing it, and get some learnings. But this is one of the single best opportunities to build your next workforce. And I would hate for us as a province to leave this behind.
Absolutely. And it's so interesting because I think if we could like wave a magic wand and have the entire business world know that you exist, I think you'd be pretty close to that goal of 100%.
I would love that.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate this discussion, and I can't wait to see what your metrics are going to be for 2026 and beyond. So thank you so much for your time.
Oh, it was my privilege to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.